Hello and welcome everyone to the information session about the new INSEAD course, which is called Rethinking Global Strategy. My name is Rudolf, or Rudi Falat, and I'm an INSEAD grad. And with me, I have a faculty that developed this course, and you will see him throughout the videos, Felipe Monteiro. And we'll hear from him in a second. And I see that you are trying to get in. I often joke about this, that the Zoom security is not as bad as you think, because we're carding everybody at the door. We're making sure you're at the right place, which is rethinking global strategy, right? So if you could help us, if you are with us live, and put in the chat where you're connecting from, that would be great. So we have a bit of an idea if we really have a global audience, because this is what this is all about. So tell us in the chat where you're connecting from. And later on, you can also put questions into Q&A whenever you like. So Fernando, Susmita, where are you connecting from? Okay. From Mexico. All right, there you go. Okay. Susmita, Tony, where are you connecting from? Welcome. So Felipe, where are you connecting from today? Maybe you help me out. You at INSEAD in Fontainebleau or Singapore or somewhere else?
I am in Fontainebleau, and it's kind of pretty cold here.
Yes, so it actually looks real, right? Because you need to wear a jacket or vest. So it, you know, it's like being in France in January. Not easy, not easy. All right, so Tony, where are you connecting from? Tell us. Because we'd like to have an interactive session with you, right? We can record another video, but ideally this is an opportunity for you to ask questions. So if you can tell us where you're connecting from, that'd be great. But as I said, my name is Rudolf, or Rudi Falat. I'm an INSEAD grad from MBA 06. And we have a strategy professor, Felipe Monteiro, with us, and he's a program director for Rethinking Global Strategy, an online course. And maybe he can say hello already. Go for it. How are you today? Felipe, how are you today?
I'm good, really. Thanks for doing this, and kind of glad to see people connecting from different parts of the world, although not everybody's writing on the chat yet. And yeah, glad to have this conversation with you and the people who are with us.
All right, wonderful. So what are we going to cover today? We're going to talk a little bit about INSEAD, and then we're going to talk about why you actually need to worry about the global strategy. But the main thing here is, well, there are many strategy courses out there, and the question could be like, why this one, right? And the angle is really, or the focus is, and that's not the marketing language, but it's the nature of the course. It's rethinking global strategy. So I will keep on repeating this, rethinking global strategy a lot. Because if you are going to work, or if you work for a global multinational company, you're thinking about realigning your resources, your focus, this is something that could be of interest to you if you're a consultant working for companies like this as well. So we'll talk about this in a minute, why this program. We'll talk a little bit about Felipe's background a little bit more. In more detail, who is this for? We'll give you an idea about the curriculum, about what the elements are, how your learning experience looks like day to day if you take this course. And of course, many of you would like to get a certificate to showcase that you have done this course. You can do this online on LinkedIn or on your CV. And we'll talk about next steps if you like what you heard and you would like to know more, how you can find out more, or how you can apply and join this course. So a little bit of a background about INSEAD. INSEAD was founded in 57, but the first class opened in 1959. So a couple of years ago, INSEAD had a big campaign, 60 years, right? So 60 years of executive education, from MBAs to other programs as well, that started in Fontainebleau Chateau or Castle. And now also INSEAD has campuses in Singapore and Abu Dhabi, and also now in San Francisco. So very international. That's the key word to take away from INSEAD. Management is another key word, I would say. And therefore, it's very much about application. It's about real life applications, right? So we're not talking about theory detached from reality. We're talking about faculty that is working closely with corporate clients or corporate partners of INSEAD as well. So you will get a hands-on practical insights from strategy, global strategy decisions that you need to face today. Maybe Felipe also has a few words about this, your experience with INSEAD, and what do you think is the key versus other programs or schools?
Really agree with everything you said. I would also kind of add, if you think this school was founded right after the Second World War to help kind of people to work together again, countries to work together again through business, right? Through working and developing new business, finding new ways of kind of cooperating and creating new business models. So, as we look around, and at least as I look around and I see what's happening today in the world, I think that DNA that is, sometimes people may take for granted. I think it's super important, right? Because we were created with that goal. And I think that goal is so present today, right? That goal of making sure that kind of in this very tense geopolitical kind of world with a lot of uncertainties, a lot of crises happening at the same time, right? That there are people here that we do every day is exactly working with people from all over the world in, through business, finding ways of working together.
Absolutely. So this also comes to a point that you hear a lot. Business is all about people, right? So what kind of people are or should be or maybe are interested in what we're going to talk about today, right? And why is it important? So you see here some stats. 57% of CEOs and chairs of boards are planning to shift investments from Europe to North America. There are 32% of CEOs who expect to shift investments and operations from Europe to Asia. So very fundamental changes for a lot of companies, right? Some companies maybe grew up as a startup years ago, or decades ago, 100 years ago. They had their own market, and now the home market is changing, right? They might need to figure out how to change the supply chain. Maybe the key clients are changing. So they need to completely rethink. And you could say the globe or planet Earth is their playground. But how do you do it, right? In general strategy courses, we talk about, for example, prioritization, picking your markets, things like this, which initiatives you should pick. But here, there is also an international angle to it, which countries to focus on, where to be based. And when you look at your value chain as well, where does it make sense? Does it make sense to have factories in Asia and clients in North America or Europe? Perhaps it does. Maybe you could also chip in here, Felipe. There was a discussion after last couple of years about end of globalization, right? Maybe we should deglobalize a little bit and come back to let's produce something closer to us. It could be because geopolitical risks, but it could be also because all environmental concerns as well, right? Doesn't make sense for something to be produced cheaply, but half the planet around, and then you need to spend money on the planes and carbon offsets and things like this just to stay where you were before. Or maybe you should produce it a little bit more expensive, maybe more expensive, but closer to home. So what do you think about that globalization debate?
Yeah, I think really you touch a lot of important points. And some people may be asking themselves, but these have always been important questions, right? So why now, right? Why are we talking about it now? Why it's particularly relevant now? And you were saying rethinking as a key word, not just kind of labeling or branding. And I think the rethinking is the more I interact with CEOs and senior leaders all over the world today, I see a lot of them going back to the drawing board and say, okay, there are a lot of things that we've been doing for quite a while, but maybe right since COVID and a number of crises, right, in this very volatile environment, a lot of them are just going back and say, okay, let's now redesign those things. Let's rethink about them. Let's check some assumptions that maybe we've been taking for granted for a while, and now we need to recheck. So I think it's because all the questions you mentioned, they are super important, and I would say they've always been. I would say that today we live in Brighton. That's very pivotal moment of, okay, you have to go back and reassess them.
All right, so this is also related to some people talk about agile strategy, right? And continuous strategy, rethinking, reassessing, complete, and maybe you cannot forecast for so long as you could in the past, right? And some of you maybe come from finance backgrounds, so you know about the discounted cash flows. And sometimes people ask, oh, how far out should we forecast? 5 years, 10 years, right? Maybe nobody has the courage to do 10 years anymore. But yes, reassess and realign on a global scale. This is what Felipe is going to talk about. So why this program in more detail, right? It's obviously very hard to do this and step aside and think about strategic choices sometimes when you are kind of drawn into it and you need to deliver. So we understand that you are senior business leaders, you have objectives, you have budgets to meet, but it's great that you are thinking about taking some time away and thinking about global strategic choices outside of the day-to-day pressures, right? Because that can obviously, a wrong decision or continuing where you are can lead you to the wrong direction. So we need to think about mastering foreign market entry modes. Like, how do you go to a new market? But even before you think about this is kind of an execution question. Why should you go somewhere else, right? What are the good business clusters? Why these sort of locations? A lot of people talk about innovation and knowledge sharing. How does this interlay with being international company? What are the capabilities? Generally speaking, companies, they look in the mirror and they think about, well, what are our capabilities? Where are the gaps? And why we should and how we should plug them, right? And it could be with other partners, and these partners could be in other markets or in other countries. This is all we're going to talk about, including also sustainability. I mentioned the word environment, obviously something not to be forgotten, even though sometimes we may have other crises on hands, but we need to think about long term. So this is about long-term solutions or long-term thinking, big picture view, global mindset, choices about markets, countries, whether it comes to value chain or other issues that you may encounter when you talk about strategy. So I'll hand over to Felipe. So you will hear from him about his research and then also what this program is about. Thank you.
Thank you, Rudy. So welcome again, those of you who just joined. Delighted to be spending some time with you and Rudy today. So I'm a professor of strategy. I joined INSEAD kind of 12 years ago. And since I joined INSEAD, I've been really focusing on teaching and doing research about global strategy. So as you can imagine, in a business school, there are a lot of professors studying strategy. And there are some of us, right? And it has been my case here, focusing exclusively on understanding strategic issues at the global level. And we were going to detail in the next slides what are those strategic issues in the global environment. As Rudy was saying, we don't, in a business school like INSEAD, we are not in an ivory tower just thinking about those issues without kind of talking to companies. So I spend a lot of my time working with large organizations from all over the world. I write a lot of cases. A number of them are cases that we'll discuss in the course. And I have also recently written, a textbook on global strategic management, which are also part of the reading material. So this is pretty close to what I do in my day-to-day. And I think what is interesting for us is just, and as I was hearing you reading, all those big questions is more or less, how do we structure those questions? It's a big question, it's a big issue. So how do we structure them? So if you go to the next slides, first, people might be wondering, and you already alluded to that, who is this course for, right? Who should be worried about it? Who should be concerned about this? I have maybe two or three main ideas on this. Obviously, there'll be, for some of you, this is going to be mainstream. This is your bread and butter, right? You are working, your senior leaders working in large multinational organizations in strategy areas, responsible for international expansion. You are working with, maybe with investor relations, and you have to explain why organizations, right? Your organization are in those different countries. What's the rationale behind it? So there's, right, and for you, maybe this is bread and butter. This is what you do every day. And now you are in that position of, I have to go and redesign, rethink, reassess. So this is one category, right? And this is right. And this is not a technical course at all, right? So the audience of this course are typically, leaders, people who are making decisions, people who are helping the team make decisions. So this is not about the technicalities. So that's first point. Second point, and Rudy also alluded to that, maybe this is not your company, but these are the companies you help, right? The companies that you consult for, companies that you are collaborating. So a lot of our participants in our executive education programs are kind of consulting, working for large consulting firms, people who are really responsible to help other organizations to move the needle and make sure that they achieve what they need to achieve strategically. So these are, I would say, very clear, kind of straightforward cases for why people might be interested in taking, learning more about this, taking this course, applying those concepts. I would also add, and as I work with organizations from parts of the world, sometimes you are in a country, let's say, I'm originally from Brazil, right? You are in Brazil, you already dominate that market. And you say, why should I care about going global? I'm already, or think about China or India, right? All those large continental countries, or even the US. Why would I care about global strategy? I'm kind of have such a dominant position in my home country. And my argument, or why I think you should care, is even if you are in your home country, very dominant position, there are a lot of industries which have global players that may want to disrupt you, that may want to enter your country. So understanding the rationale and the logic and what's happening at a global level, even for domestic firms, can be pretty important. So we joke here, and I don't know if you remember this, Rudy, but sometimes we joke, for INSEAD, global strategy is something that all leaders should know, right? So this is not a niche technical course. It's pretty, fundamental to any kind of leader in a global world like today. So can we go to the next slide, Rudy? And if you put up yourself on the shoes of someone like us designing a course on this, how do you talk about all those issues? How do you structure a course like this? I think in the next slides I will detail what is in each module, but maybe let me give you some flavor of what is there. As I was saying before, first, there's a lot of case-based discussions. Right? So one thing is to learn theoretically, how do you enter different countries, or what are the distances between two countries? What are kind of location choices you can make in terms about your home country, etc. The other thing is to discuss and see and learn from leaders doing this. So throughout the course, there'll be a lot of case discussions. And also, what I typically do is I interview the case protagonists. So you learn not only from me, right? But I go to the CEO, let's take, NL, right? On the larger utilities in the world. Or might talk about British Telecom, or we talk about Tag Heuer or FC Barcelona. So when we discuss those cases, what I typically bring to the course is, we have some theoretical answers, some frameworks, super applied. We have the real story there, the cases, and I've been asking you to put yourselves on the shoes of the protagonist. But also, many times what we're going to also have is we were going to have short videos with the protagonist that will tell you, how they dealt with it. What were the decisions? What were the learnings? So I think this is pretty important in terms of the way we structured that course. Obviously, this is not a full-time program for you, You're working at the same time that you were doing this, And carving out time to follow and to work on this is not trivial. So there's a lot of flexibility, in terms of you doing this in your own time, self-paced. But at the same time, there are a lot of possibilities for you to interact with your colleagues who are attending the program at the same time as you, and doing this synchronously and sometimes synchronously. So there are also sessions that we're gonna do, and we're gonna have kind of the teaching team working with you, and also a session with me. So I think this is pretty much, and Rudy was saying, please, if you have questions, I see there are a number of you who join later. Please feel free to include, to put things on the chat. We're gonna open up later to have your to allow you to pose questions immediately, but you don't have to wait until the end. Okay, so if you have questions, feel free to do so. I think that what's coming next, and Rudy, is there anything you want to kind of ask
No, this is
or,
perfect.
you
Let's
know,
just let's just don't hesitate. If you just join us, this is meant to be an interactive session, your opportunity to hear from Felipe, from the faculty who designed this program. Any questions you have, any comments you might want to have, so you can put them in the chat or Q&A now, or we can also discuss it at the end as you wish. But go ahead, Felipe.
Thank you, Rudy. So what you have now, and you have here in one slide, right? And then we're gonna detail in the next slides, is basically, what are those strategic global strategy questions? Sometimes I talk to people that say, oh, I have done so many strategy courses, or I have learned so much about strategy. What I typically say is many times the global strategy aspects, they were there, but they were in the background. Okay, so yeah, so if you're talking about Tesla or Samsung or Spotify or any of those global companies, say yeah, this anything that they do is global. Okay, but I think there's something else there, which is sometimes it is global, but you're not really addressing the global strategic implication, right? It is something secondary there. I think in this course, what we do is we put the global strategy issues at the forefront, right? So these are the questions we want to, right? And we assume that a lot of things that you already know about strategy. I think what we want to discuss in this course are the issues which are really related about global strategy. Excuse me. So Rudy, if we go to the next slide, what you see is we have five modules. And how do we, and again, these are pretty big questions. Okay, so I think what we try to offer you is an organized, structured way of addressing those questions, right? Learning more, understanding. But I think it's very important to offer you an overarching framework, so you can put those questions to different buckets, understand how they talk to each other. So what we do in module 1, basically two things. One is discuss what's happening outside in the world, and Rudy was saying before, this, are we really seeing the end of globalization, deglobalization, a new phase of globalization? How do we understand this? How do we measure this? How do we have a more informed, more balanced view on this? So that's pretty important, right? As we start, it's just making sense of what's happening in this world today. The second one is offering you one framework that addresses a lot of those questions. That's, you may like or dislike it. People say, oh, it's an ugly name, right? That talk about this Gomes framework. But basically, I offer you in one single slide, one way of answer all those questions, right? And which are basically, you understand how industries get global or not, right? So the globalization drivers. So that's the G. You understand what are the ownership advantages, meaning what is particularly good that you can have globally. So, to what extent what you do travel, right? Your advantage travel or not travel. What is the advantage of being located in certain places? So that's the O. The L is about location choices, okay? So how do you choose where you go? The M is about motivations and motives. Why do you go global? The I is about, the way we talk about internalization, meaning what you keep internally, right? What you do yourself versus what you do with partners. What do you do in terms of in different countries you go, right? You may have different joint ventures or agents or representatives. So we have that conversation. Finally, the S there is about sustainability. How, as a global company, you can take advantage of a global scope to have an edge on sustainability. So this is, in during the course we think about other names, but we try to offer you one single framework on this, and then we go through each of those, right? So we start, okay, what about home base, location choices, right? And then we go, what are the different ways you can enter countries, right? So those entry modes, and you see, for example, here in module 3, we talk about the why, the how, the when of going global. And again, these are fundamental questions. I think what we try to provide you in this course is, okay, giving you more structured way of understanding, assessing them. Because if you are with me with this idea that a lot of what's happening now is kind of going back to the drawing board and kind of asking again those questions, what we're trying to offer you is, okay, is there more structured way of asking and answering those questions. Okay, so overall, this is what we try to do this. So this is module 1, 2, and 3. If we go to the next modules, what do you see? Right, so if we go to the next slide, you see that the module 4 and 5, pretty heavy on the idea of global innovation and global innovation for sustainability. A lot of people, including myself, believe that the big advantage of multinational company is really being able to innovate globally. So Rudy was saying before, the idea of knowledge flows and transfer of best practices. So if you're a global company, you can really take advantage of your global footprint to identify and recombine ideas and really have an advantage doing this. So we will try to explore how multinationals do that. And also, right, if you say, no, but I'm not a multinational, I think it's also interesting to see, okay, how multinationals partner with different local companies to achieve that goal of innovating globally. So there's a lot of action now. You can also speculate, the more and more we go to a knowledge economy, the more and more, right, and now everything is about Gen AI and, right, and data, the more and more you say, okay, well, maybe more than the advantage of having the physical products per se, is what's the knowledge embedded there, what are the innovation embedded there, and what's the advantage of having kind of global scope to do this. So this is what we do in module 4. And then module 5, and again, I think part of the reason a lot of organizations are going back to the drawing board for global strategies is exactly because of sustainability. And Rudy, you were saying that you were here at INSEAD many years ago. So if I go today, right, and we see what I discuss with executives and my MBA students, right? So even for global strategy is, okay, how sustainability is really changing your global strategy is a major driver for change, because you were saying before, okay, maybe you can get it a bit cheaper from the other part of the world, but what is the carbon footprint of doing this? And how reliable is this? And if you see, right, some people say, okay, so there's a cost, right? Wow, I have to comply. Some other more advanced firms say, okay, actually, yes, it's true, but there's also huge advantages, right? Huge opportunities in terms of how do I transform my business model, from the energy transition, which we're going to discuss in the course, to all kinds of new business models, all kinds of new industries that will emerge. I think this is what we're going to cover there. So again, I hope this kind of going through quickly those modules gave you a flavor of it, right? There's much more. And let me turn back to you, Rudy, and then we open up and see questions that people may have.
Of course, and please think about the questions, put them in a Q&A ideally, or in the chat, doesn't matter, or you can raise your hand, we can unmute you, you can speak up as well. Don't hesitate. Again, this is meant to be an interactive session, so if you have questions, especially about what Felipe was just saying, so global strategy in the new era of potentially deglobalization, where to compete, when, how, and when, global open innovation and sustainability. All of these topics we'll cover in the course, but if you have questions, please don't hesitate. What will come at the end? Sometimes you are here only for the raw knowledge, which is fine, but most people would like to obviously signal that they took this course, and for this we will provide you with a digital certificate so that when people will check on you, this is obviously foreseeing background checks. They can check this is genuine. You can use it to promote yourself and your skills and your knowledge on LinkedIn and on your CV as well. So in the chat also, you'll see from the team a link to schedule a call with an advisor. So the first QR code is schedule a call with an advisor. There you could talk one-on-one. Once you sleep on it, you heard an introduction to this course, some information. You want to have some follow-up questions, you can schedule a call with an advisor. So that's on the left. Or if you already think that you want to go for it, you can scan the QR code on the right, which is apply now. And there, this will get you to the registration page. And you can also download a brochure. In any case, if you register for this webinar, then you will get the slides, you will get the recording as well. You see the price here before discount. If you act early, you will actually get a discount and a lower price as well. But coming back to the content, Morgan has a question for you, Felipe. Do we also cover strategies for generating new revenue streams in unfamiliar markets?
Thanks, Morgan, for your question. Yes, we do talk about it because a lot of us think about global strategy, not about what you're already doing, but as new growth avenues, right? And new growth avenues many times will be in unfamiliar markets. I think what we discuss, right, and that comes when we talk about kind of location choices and entry mode choices, is, if you go to a very unfamiliar place, there's a huge potential, right? Maybe there's a huge potential for your market, but also there is a cost of operating in those unfamiliar places. So what we're going to discuss in the course, okay, you see the opportunity. How do we understand what are the costs, right? There's a term that we use is liability of foreigners. What's the liability of not being a local company, right? As you go to those unfamiliar places. But more importantly, how do you alleviate, right? How do you diminish? How do you attenuate those costs, right? And what are the strategies that you can do? So yeah, super prevalent and super interesting question.
Wonderful. So if you have more questions, again, use that Q&A box. I know a lot of people are on the line now. So also you can tell us where you're connecting from. If you just join later, that would be good to know. Because I know we have people from all around the world typically. So where are you connecting from? Anybody wants to tell me? We're not going to tell you, boss, that you're connecting from the beach in Indonesia. No problem. We will only send it to people who sign up for this webinar. All right, so Lauren is connecting from the UAE. We got India in the house. Okay.
So Rudy, as people say where they're connecting from, let me take advantage that I see, all those different countries appearing there, UAE, India, UK, and Boston. Boston must be pretty early, Morgan. So one of the things that in design this course, we want to make sure that we did is really to have a global coverage in the cases, okay? Because we can talk about global strategy from the perspective of US companies or European companies. I think what we try to do in this course is really have coverage from all over the world. And it's interesting. I think Lauren was saying that she was connecting from the UAE, and it just occurred to me, right? So for example, in one of the modules that we talk about clusters, right? One of the clusters that we discuss is exactly about kind of UAE and fashion in the UAE. So I think maybe the message I want to send to people who are thinking about the course is this is really not only the issues are global, but also the cases, right, that we use are really global cases.
Well, we see a bit of an organizational question as well. Are there any prerequisites? Is there an application process? So if you scan this QR code on the right, this will lead you to registration. I don't think there are any prerequisites. I think it's a bit about self-selection, right? So we are talking about who is this for, or we talked about who is this for, right? So if you come back to this, and we said it's for global business leaders, managers, and business consultants, right? So if you fall into those categories, definitely you're welcome, and we'd like to see you on the program. If you have a bit of a different background, that could be as well. But maybe a good idea is to schedule a call with an advisor, talk about your specific situation. But coming back to Felipe's point about cases, INSEAD is very strong in the case writing world, right? And the INSEAD believes in case method, and frankly, it's the most international business school out there that you can think of. So when you think about global strategy, international application, management, leadership, I think INSEAD is obviously the first place where you should look. And I'm not saying it because I'm an alumnus, or maybe because of that, because I know this is really the truth.
Rudy, let me add 2 points to the things you already said. I think the first one is when we design a course, I mean, it's always a question. I mean, to what extent you cover the heterogeneity of past experience, right? Some people would be super familiar with it. Some people will be less familiar with it. So what we try to do, right, is kind of, there are a lot of readings. And, for example, for each class, there's a chapter of my book. And at the end of those chapters, there are so many more references, right? Not only references, articles, but also websites and this. So, right, and I'm kind of reacting to the question about the prerequisites, because I think part of the self-paced is say, okay, this is something that I know quite a lot. I mean, I can go straight to the case. Part of it is, maybe this is something that I'm less familiar with. I would like to read more, right? And how do we provide the resources that allow you to do that? So that's one. Your point about international, as it was in my bio, right? So I had the privilege of working in some of the best business schools in the world before coming to INSEAD. And I think the impression I got is always all those schools are very international. I think what is really different about INSEAD is there's no center of gravity. Okay, because you take a top business school in the US and the UK, these are really international schools. I mean, there are people from everywhere, but you still feel there's a center of gravity which is Anglo-Saxon. Okay, so I think what is fascinating about INSEAD as a learning environment is that you go there and there's no majority, right? There's no center of gravity. It's not that, have 80% one nationality and then 20 of all over the world. It's really, people from, and that I think forces all of us on how, when you see those issues, right? We don't see it from a specific anchor, right? We have more plasticity, right? More malleability in our mind. Say, oh yes, this could work here, but doesn't work at all there. And I think this is very enriching.
Absolutely. And we have some questions about how much effort this is required every week. I would say around 4 to 6 hours a week would be my estimate, but of course it's quite individual. I don't think it's related to whether you are experienced strategy professional or not, but it's more about how interested you are in particular topics, how deeply you want to go, because we'll give you some additional reading, some additional resources. So that could be on the lower end of this, otherwise it would be on the shorter end of this. And then also you're asking about networking aspects. So what we try to do is promote networking, because you learn from faculty, you learn from the material, but you also learn from your peers. So we'll be providing you with the course website where you'll be, you see what kind of people are there with you. You will obviously put up your profile, maybe your social media handles. You can connect with each other. We can think about potentially networking session or so, but typically you will have an access to the course website for 1 year from the start of the program. So therefore, you also don't need to set up a group outside, but some people do. Some cohorts set up a LinkedIn group, for example, so they have a virtual Rolodex forever. But you have access to the course website for 1 year from the start. So you will see all the people there. You can contact them. We'll also give you opportunities to interact during the live sessions as well. So you will see who shares their experience, what industry they're from, and then you can follow up later. Any idea about type of assignments? Maybe coming back to what Felipe was also already talking about when we talked about the program, right? So maybe you want to comment on assignments or case studies, anything like that?
Yeah, Rudy. So first, I think we appreciate that different people learn differently, right? So I think in terms of, there's a lot of variety, different types of assignments. So people can write from, I put my opinion on it, right, in a message board, and then you comment, right, and then you give feedback, and you do this networking. I mean, sometimes synchronously, but many times asynchronously. So that's one. But also, I think there's a lot of assignments which are about, okay, in your industry. Okay, so we talked about, I don't know, Tag Heuer, right? Watches, and how Tag Heuer, decide to go to Silicon Valley and partner with Google and Intel. Okay, we understand this type of global collaborations here. What about, right, in the watch industry? What about your industry? What's happening? So I think there's a lot of opportunities for participants to have assignments which are very concrete to them, things that really matter to them, which are happening in their own company and industry, but also have enrich, kind of open up their mind, because many times, right, we're going to be people from all over, all types of industries. So you do your assignment about yours, but then you learn from what your colleagues are talking about other industries. So, I mean, if I were to go quickly in terms of the nature, what is my mind is kind of variety. kind of different ways, so people might learn differently, and super applied, and giving a lot of opportunities for participants, to put in practice the frameworks we discuss, right? And also bring their own experience, bring what's happening in their industries and companies.
And also, there is a question about group assignments. I think by default, we expect you to work individually, but we could accommodate that if there is interest. But I think the most important thing is maybe what Felipe just said, message boards. So there you can post your reactions to the content, and it's moderated by the facilitator that you will have as well, but your peers will respond to you. And that way you can, of course, learn from others. So that's a same kind of goal as if you were working on an assignment in a group as well. So all great questions. Any other questions or concerns or comments? So rethinking strategy. Go for it, Felipe. Yeah.
No, I was just wondering, that story that, silence, different cultures have a huge difference in terms of how tolerant they are to silence, right? So in certain places, people are, right, for example, in Latin America, right, you ask, and right, you speak, and I'm already interjecting, because that's right, zero tolerance to silence. You already expect this continuous engagement. There's some certain parts, right, in Asia that people would go and would be very comfortable with a long silence, right? They are reflecting, thinking about it. So, when you ask and nobody immediately answered, what was happening in my mind was, we should give them a Japanese moment of silence to reflect. But I think more profoundly on this, what I hope, right? I know this is going to be recorded, right? So people can go and have access to the slides, etc. But also, a lot of us wonder, what is, what's the advantage of having an online course like this, right? And I think, to me, as you having all those questions, one thing that is very clear to me is, as much as many of us would love to be in the same place at the same time, continuously, and have those conversations. No, the reality is that people are super busy. There's so many things going on. People are geographically distributed. So I think what a program like this offers is that ability of, on the one hand, you are connected, right? And you are exchanging ideas with faculty and colleagues from all over the world. But on the other hand, it doesn't impose the need that you have to do this, being in the same place, right? And connecting at the same time. So I think what I hope, right, that this program also offers you, we are delighted to have so many people who come and spend time here in Fontainebleau or Singapore or Abu Dhabi or San Francisco. But we appreciate, that a lot of kind of senior leaders all over the world, that they maybe at this moment, they cannot do that. And what we hope is that kind of having, and those conversations are very important, right? So that they can still have those conversations, still have access to, the things that we are discussing here on campus, and kind of learn from each other.
Absolutely. So the advantage is you can connect with other people. We talked about networking. We talked about learning from others as well. And maybe they would be too busy to come to Fontainebleau for 6 weeks or so. So this way you can reach them even if they are based in the UAE, or, as you said, or in Brazil, or in Mexico, or in Asia. And you can talk about the rethinking global strategy. I repeat it again, right? So how to change your approach to global strategy. Are we talking about being more global or less global? How do we balance it with sustainability goals, things like this, as we mentioned before? So if you liked what you heard and you would like to know more, so either you scan the QR code on the right and you go to apply now, and you also have a link in the chat as well, and you download the brochure, you fill in the registration form, and off you go. The sooner you do it, the price will be actually lower than what you see on the screen. You get a bit of a early concession, And then if you have questions, whether this still applies to me or not, you can schedule a call with an advisor as well, scanning the QR code on the left, or from my perspective. So schedule a call and underneath that. So we hope that you enjoyed this information session, and that we hope that to see you in this course as well. So thank you so much for great questions and for participation. And if you're watching it from the recording, please follow up. And again, also, I hope that we all connected online, and we can think about how to rethink global strategy problems of today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.